for the love, so now I'm doing what I want.
What's up, everybody? Funny for Overtime. Coach Tony here, Tony Cotillo. And as always, hopefully everybody had a fantastic weekend. I know, listen, I can't believe we're going into Thursday already, but so many different things to talk about. Like I told you, we're going to do some video episodes. We're going to do some interviews, some just straight podcasts. And I was getting this week's podcast together, and it'll be posted tomorrow. But this topic came up, and I thought it was extremely important. And it was something I thought was really going to be interesting to address, because it's exactly why I started the Fighting for Overtime podcast. If you're not a subscriber yet, I will tell you, you're missing out. Not because it's me, but because of the stories that we're telling, because of the people that we are getting on. You see it right there on TikTok, on Instagram, Fighting for Overtime. As always, the Rise and React Media YouTube page. You can see all the YouTube episodes, but most importantly, just go download the podcast wherever you get your podcast from, whether it be iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, you name it, wherever you go, it's all there. And listen, it is taking on a life of its own. I have so many different things planned for next week, specific interviews, but this is a topic that I think was extremely important. I thought that we should all touch on. Now, the last video we talked about was the holidays, right? Youth Sports Story holidays. This is very interesting, right? LPGA pro golfer Lexi Thompson calls it quits at 29 years old. 29 years old, and cites mental health reasons as the culprit. Like I've said, this is exactly why I started this program. This really should tell you something, okay? This should really tell you something about what is going on in youth sports. I'll tell you, 29 years old, to think that you've already had a 17-year career. Yeah, you heard me right. 17-year career Lexi Thompson had already at 29 years old. First major in single-digit ages, okay? That's how much she was brought into the pro spotlight. And she had a lot of interesting quotes, a lot. And one of the most important ones that I thought that I should share, and I think was very, very important, was this one right here. You'll see this later. She says, I just think, especially with what's happened in golf as of recently, a lot of people don't realize what we go through as a professional athlete. Thompson said, I'll be the last one to say, throw me a pity party. I love that quote. That's important. That's the last thing I want. We're doing what we love. We're trying the best every single day. You know, we're not perfect. We're humans. Words hurt. It's hard to overcome sometimes. That's a huge statement. That is a huge statement. Because let's just think about this. And I want to get to so many different quotes from about the Lexi Thompson situation and how it pertains to us in the youth sports world. Okay. Now, Lexi went through a lot of ups and downs, right? It happens. You know, she missed some, tournament cuts. When she was there, she didn't always win. And she got a lot of heat, man. She got a lot of heat. And I love this story because it shows how much heat our kids are getting right now. Think about it. All about the win, right? All about the win. We've talked about that before in this program. Everything's about the win. Everything's about trophies. Everything's about medals. Everything's about that next level, right? And eventually, it continues to weigh on you. And it weighs on you so bad that sometimes it spirals out of control before you even know it's happening. Think about it. Now, look at somebody's other comments. Again, like I said, it's very important when you read this. Listen, she says, golf has been my life ever since I was 5 years old. Tournaments when I was 7. Haven't really known much of a different life, but it's been an amazing one. Thompson said, and this is straight off of Golf Monthly. Now, think about what she just said there. Since I was 5 years old, tournaments when I was 7. I bring that up because, again, in this mantra, this, or I should say, this monster of youth sports that we've created now, this is one of the biggest issues. Yes, there's a tournament schedule, there's a league schedule, I get all that, right? I understand. But if there's never a break and there's never a time, mental health matters. And it really, really takes us on another level. So that's why it's so important for these young athletes, men, women, boys, girls, whoever, doesn't matter. They need such a huge supporting cast. They really do. They need advocates everywhere. They need the coaches. Let me tell you something. I said this before and I'll continue to say it. The coaches are so important that sometimes you take them for granted. And unfortunately, you shouldn't. Now, they're not all good. Okay. They're not all good. I get it. Trust me. I'm going to elaborate on some of the ones I think that suck too. Okay. That were in my area of expertise from my own situations. But, even as a golf coach, right? Even the golf coaches at that time, you think about the constant push and push and push. Now, again, at that time, that may have been what Lexi wanted. And she never alluded to this as far as it being because she was doing too much. You heard the quote. A lot of it is overcoming some of the issues that you have when it comes to a social direction, when it comes to a social platform. Obviously, some of these athletes, and I understand it, they can't always turn it off. Everybody thinks it's so simple to turn it off. It's not always easy to turn it off. It's not always easy to just look past it. And we're talking about a 29-year-old established female athlete. Think about that. A 29-year-old established female athlete. And think about what Becky Hammond said about Caitlin Clark. If you listen to the Sirius show on Sunday night, the producer played the cup for me because I felt very strongly about it. It's about a minute and a half. Okay. Her and Angel Wilson. Now, it was a really big deal. And it had to be said. And I'm glad Becky Hammond said it. I love Becky Hammond. I said it all. I love Becky Hammond. I hope she is, no disrespect to Dawn Staley, but I hope Becky Hammond is the first coach of a female notoriety when we talk about a head coach in the NBA. I just think she is such a fantastic mind. Played the game, obviously. You heard her talk about. Look, she made a joke, right? I don't care if it was Kermit the Frog. We're getting charter flights now, something that we wanted when I was playing the WNBA in the 90s. And I bring up the Caitlin Clark thing because we're talking about a 22-year-old female here in Caitlin Clark that is dealing with so much good, bad, hate, neglect. I mean, it has been absolutely on another level. And here's Lexi Thompson coming out in the LPGA at the U.S. Women's Open saying, I've had enough. And I'm 29. And I can't deal with it. So think about, can Caitlin Clark deal with it? I bring this up again because we really, really have to keep an eye on our kids, man. We do. We have to keep an eye on our kids. This is starting. This is just the beginning. Okay? You just watch Stetson Bennett, right? For the LA Rams. Talk about mental health episodes. Walked away from the game, then comes back. Another kid in his 20s. This is a problem. This is a problem. We talk about burnout. This is a problem. Here's some more quotes from Lexi Thompson. There's more things to life than going to a tournament every week and doing the same training every day. There's just more to it. And I'm looking forward to experience that. I really want to put these quotes in because I wanted to break them down. And what I like to do, just so everybody knows. And again, comments are open. I know this is quick live. Listen, you have comments right now, throw them up there, not an issue. Make sure, listen, if you want to talk about the story, you want to leave me a message about it, fightingforovertime@gmail.com. You could say, hey, I heard this, I heard that, I really like this. Not everybody wants to be seen on social media, which is fine. I get it. Listen, there's no judgments here, whether it's on the platform, behind the platform, it doesn't matter. Everything is fair game. This is a vent session. This is somewhere where you can feel safe. This is somewhere where you can talk about what's going on. I continue to say that. Have a lot of really, really cool people coming on next week. I cannot wait. One of my favorites is going to be one of my former softball players who I coached for years. I cannot wait to get her on. It's only like 3-4 years removed, which she's going to be able to give you some situations where maybe this was an issue, which I think is fantastic. But think about this quote again. There's more things to life than going to a tournament every week and doing the same training every day. There's just more to it. And I'm looking forward to experiencing that. Again, quoted by the great Lexi Thompson, who calls it quits at 29. Calls it quits at 29 for mental health reasons. Wow. That is extremely powerful. Now think about that quote, okay? Think about that quote. And the reason why I want you to think about that quote is because listen to how it pertains to us right now, what our crazy ass schedules continue to be. And again, please understand, I get it. That may be what you want to do, and that is fine. Listen, that's one thing I want people to understand, and I'm going to continue to drive it home. At no point, I have really branded myself as being open to opinions on both sides. Okay. I do that in the sports world all the time. I do it in the PR world all the time. And I'm doing it here. Not always going to be right, but I'm going to have my opinion. I did not want to spend every weekend at a tournament with my children. I didn't. I wanted to have a life. I wanted to spend time with family and the real family, not my soccer family. No disrespect, because I love them very much, but I spent a ton of time with the soccer family. I want to spend time with my own family. I want to spend time in my backyard. I wanted to go on vacation with my family. There were so many things I wanted to do, not always just for a tournament. And again, some people, that is their vacation and they love it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I continue to say that. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Listen, I am going to say one of the biggest supporters of this show. I won't say their last name, but one of the biggest supporters of this show. And I'm sure if they listen, and they're going to know who I'm talking about. Their kid, when he plays for the Yukis, and he's doing fantastic. And I'll tell you what, one thing about my man Steve is he loves the game. He loves watching this kid play. Now, here's the funny part. From the outskirts, people will look, and if they follow him, here we go. Bragging about this, bragging about that. Nah, he's bragging about his kid, man. He's bragging about his kid, and he's bragging because he loves not about the win. Yeah. Do they mention? Of course, because he's just being honest, right? But he loves watching his kid play. Nothing wrong with that. It's okay. It really is. Right? That's his direction. But guess what? I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you that my man went through the same trials and tribulations that I did. So he knows. He understands. He gets it. Being a coach himself, right? He gets it. And shout out to him too, because he does it the right way. And I love watching it. And it's why I love being friends with people on Facebook for those specific reasons, so I can continue to watch their kids grow. Shout out to one of my favorite people. I'll continue to say that. Sienna Blake, her mom, shout out to Tracy, and just sent me a message tonight. Get interviewed by my girl Carm. I love it. Hoops with Carm. I can't wait to see it. But again, I'm excited. See, that's a difference. Like, I'm excited. I can't wait. I love watching these kids play, man. I do. Listen. I'm in talks right now with doing some live shows in Northeast Philadelphia at some camps starting at the end of June. Can't wait to do that. Really can't wait. Talking to Eagles ex former player Mark McMillan, who does a fantastic camp himself, going there and talking to those people. Logan Ryan, who does a camp, talking to him and his people for doing something with them. Just be watching these kids develop and making sure that they understand, that there is other things that they could do. And on top of that, understanding that this isn't the end of the world, right? I understand you want to work hard, and that's what we want, right? Work hard, play hard. I get it. But at the end of the day, you really have to be careful that you don't go so far in that you don't even know who you are, that you get to this point with the mental health aspect and it's too late. So we really have to watch that. And this is what happens, obviously what happened to Lexi Thompson. She also writes, I feel like I'm very content where my life is and where the decision will lead me to. I'm looking forward to what life has in store other than golf. Eh, Listen, I this comes on the heels again of when we talked about Birdow. She's 29 and she's already had a 17-year career. She's 29 and has already had a 17-year career. Think about that. For 17 years. Listen, most people don't even hit their prime until 30. She's retiring at 29. She's retired at 29 specifically because the mental health aspect, because she's burnt. She wants to see what else is there to do. I'm tired of the same regimen every single day. I'm tired of fighting with people every single day. It's to the point where I can't do it anymore. The words are hurtful. The things you say are hurtful. And that's another thing. And that's where social media has really gotten a black eye. And I'll be honest with you, that's why I can't stand Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it anymore, because I feel like it's just a cesspool of trolls and hatred and toxicity. I'm on there specifically. Number one, I am a publicist. I run a PR company. I run a media company. I have to be on top of my game. So I'm on there a lot specifically because I like to follow the news, and no disrespect to the other platforms. That's one of the biggest platforms for the breaking news aspects, to follow the reporters and follow the stations. And not only that, but how about following the young athletes as well? I have a lot of athletes that I follow on there that follow me, and we really get in-depth conversations. I like to see where they're recruiting from. I like to see where they're going. Those are really, really important things to me, that I like to see. And then on top of that, listen, you get to talk to fantastic people. Like, we're going to talk to Justin Newton next week, heads men basketball coach for Reinhardt University. I can't wait for that. Okay, he's been doing it for a long time. He has a lineage. Okay, he's got tons of camps he's doing for these kids. He's going to talk about the mental health aspect, and that's very important. And that's what we have to look at. What are these kids at a young age? What are they doing at that young age? What are we doing to help them along? And that's extremely important. What was Lexi Thompson doing? Think about it. What was Lexi doing? Where did this go wrong? Where did it spiral off the tracks? And I think that's the most important thing we need to talk about, is where did it spiral off? And it brings you to several different scenarios that I can think of for you and for me that we've probably all dealt with at some time. We probably all dealt with it sometime, because unfortunately, when you go through the youth sports spiral, when you go through it with your first child, that's where you learn. For good or bad, you learn with your first child. You think you need to be all in with certain things. You're trying to keep up with the competition, because in your mind, if your kid's not the next step above, you're going to be left behind. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And it really weighs on the parents, it weighs on the child. And that's where this burnout sets in. I think about what I was doing again with my daughter at softball when she first wanted to play. I remember thinking about this. I remember talking about this. I remember the hitting coaches that, every Sunday. I remember the hitting instruction 2, 3 times a week, the extra catching sessions because my daughter was a catcher. I remember all of it. And I'll tell you what, man, that was deep. That was a lot. That was a lot for me. I remember it like it was yesterday. And goddamn, I know that I got parents out there that even though they're extremely happy, that they're burnt too. Think about it. Every si- and but here's the other thing I want to say. And again, I started fighting for overtime. Again, make sure you go following Fighting for Overtime on Instagram and TikTok, but most importantly, wherever you get your podcast from, whether it be Apple, Spotify, make sure you go check them out at Podbean on the Podbean app. That's who's hosting my podcast. We've already dropped 4 episodes already. Working on more. Listen, I'm doing it kind of as like bulk because these aren't timestamped unless we have specific topics like this where Lexi Thompson calls it quits, and we could talk about this, and we could get kind of get a pulse on what everybody's thinking. And then when I have interviews, obviously, of course, they're going to be separate as well. So make sure you go. We've talked about daddy ball. We've talked about burnout. We've talked about personal reflection stories as a parent, as an athlete, and this is that the other side, the positive side of this argument, because the positive side is keeping your kid out of trouble. You hear people say, I just want to keep my kid out of trouble. If he's playing, he's safe. I hear that a lot, right? If he's playing, he's safe. I get it. Completely get it. Listen, I specifically, you may laugh at this, but I made sure as my kids, and when I say kids, my soccer kids, because that was the last sport I've been coaching. I made sure that my soccer kids were signed up. We were as a team to play Friday night or Saturday night soccer. Why did I do that, you ask? Keep them out of trouble. To keep them out of trouble. People are like, what? Yeah, to keep them out of trouble. Because I wanted them to know that it was my goal to make sure that themselves, that they knew that I was going to be their advocate. And I wanted to be with them as much as they wanted to be with me. And at first, it was like, oh man, coach, the weekend, yeah. Yeah, you know what? Because you're going to get your head out of that damn video game. Okay. You're going to get off the phone in the group chats. You're going to get off of TikTok and you're going to get out. You're going to be with your teammates. You're going to form some memories, form some bonds. And guess what? That's one less night I have to worry about you. One less night I have to worry about you. And I mean that in a very respectful way, saying I want to make sure that you're safe. And that was one of the ways I would do it. Indoor on Friday, tournament on Saturday. All you got left is Sunday. And usually 90% of the time, my kids were watching football on Red Zone. So I made sure the weekends were covered. Now, parents weren't liking me that much because, their weekends were out of whack, right? But I want to make sure the kids were the priority. And having these kids as the priority, listen, it's where it has to be done. If you're a head coach at any level, kids are the priority. Sport is not the priority. Wins are not the priority. Game is not the priority. Program, don't give me that shit about the program being the priority. The kids are the priority because mental health matters. And to get back to my previous point, the good part about having the tournaments all the time and the trainings all the time isn't about you getting better, in my opinion. It was about the bond that I created, with most importantly with my daughter, because it was the constant drives to the cages, the constant drives to the instructional elements. It's constant drives to the tournaments, getting up at 6 a.m. to be in Reading. That's an hour and a half away to play that first game at 8 a.m. In a brutal heat in the sun where you just got your ass kicked the day before. That's not easy. But guess what? Damn, was that fun. Having some sing-alongs on the way. I'm gonna post some videos too. I tell you, man, we had some fantastic times, in softball for moments and memories, not just me and my daughter, but me and the kids. And I can't wait to have one of my kids on next week to talk about that because I know she remembers. There was this, again, finally we get to a point. And again, this was, I would say, about 7 years ago, 8 years ago. So if you live on the East Coast, you go to the World Series, not the Pony World Series. Pony World Series for softball is at different states every year. If you go to just the World Series, it's in Ocean City, Maryland. And Ocean City, Maryland has a bunch of different fields, probably about 6 or 7 fields. So it is a week-long thing. You get there usually on a Monday, or actually, no, you get there on a Monday. You check in. Your first games, you got games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I mean, it's all week. Okay. Well, hot, very sticky, mucky. Ocean City, Maryland. When it gets humid, man, it gets nasty. So I remember we were at a complex that had 3 softball fields. So if it had 3 softball fields, you had 6 teams. And the way they did it was they one good thing is they kept you at the same coordinates. Now you may have had a decent amount of layover time, but at least you didn't have to drive from one field to the next. You were at that complex that day. Now, I forget what the complex was called. It began with a W. I forget exactly what it was, but it was so hot, and all of a sudden, I mean, it let loose. Now you have to remember, this is the World Series, right? So it's not like we could just postpone the game and play again a couple days later. No, you've built a week-long tournament that's based upon seedings. You've built this week-long tournament that goes by each individual team playing one another and things of that nature. So the funny thing is, it pours and everybody's looking around like we know we're going to play this game, but it poured. When I say it poured, I mean, talk about, it was like a river, on that clay in the infield. So there was a lot of work that had to be done by the grounds crew. So preliminary results or preliminary estimates when it finally stopped pontooning out there was 2 hours. Now, the field we were in literally was like in the middle of nowhere. And 2 hours wasn't enough time to leave to go somewhere and come back because you really couldn't get anywhere because roads were flooded. And if you did, you were driving 45 minutes away. I mean, this field that we were at, this complex was like 40 minutes away from our hotel. So it's not like you were to go back there either. So, the kids were getting down a little bit. Well, all of a sudden, here's the funny thing. And here's the moment. And I'll post some of these. Make sure you're fighting for overtime on TikTok, Instagram. I will post some of these, I promise. Their videos, but all of a sudden a dance party breaks out from all the teams. And I'm being honest, when I say all the teams, I mean all the teams. Literally like electric slide, like everything. It was so much fun to watch kids from all different nationalities, all different backgrounds, all different locations, all different age levels, just all being together and saying, you know what? Screw the weather, screw softball. We're going to let it loose and we're just going to have fun. And I watch these videos a lot, and it's so awesome to see. It really is so awesome to see. And I watch these videos and I say, this is when everything is just can be so simple. Youth sports can really be so simple if we don't let it spin out of control. Honestly, it can be simple. It's a simple game that we really blow way out of proportion. But it's a simple game that can create with you memories and bonds to last an entire lifetime. That's why if you go back to last couple weeks episode of team hopping and team loyalty, it's a reason why I'm not a big fan of it, because you never cement yourself in that position for long enough to create those memories. I don't want 1 year memories, man. I want lifelong memories. I want lifelong moments. And that's what I was able to build. That's what I was able to do. Some of them good, some of them bad. But moments like that where you literally had 6 teams, okay? 6 teams, and each team probably had about 15 to 16 girls on it. I mean, you're talking about almost 100 girls in line dancing, okay, all together, laughing, enjoying themselves, smiling. I- like you can't make it up. But see, that's the problem. Everybody right now as a youth athlete is so hell bent on needing to be that next step, needing to be that next big thing, right? Needing to go to that next level, that they're so stressed amongst each other that they can't even smile. They can't even have fun. Now, again, I will say this wholeheartedly. I understand that there are athletes, and they're whether young, old, whoever, that are built like that, and that's what they need to do. Listen, do you, man? Honestly, that's fine. But all I recommend is hopefully you have that advocacy for you. You have that big support system that's ready for that crash, because there's going to be a time, and I don't mean physically, mentally, you're going to crash a little bit, and you're going to need help getting back, putting the pieces back together, and getting back up. And obviously, Lexi Thompson decided that I need to get back up, but I'm not going back down. I'm gonna go in a whole different direction. And that's why she retired. And that's why she said, I'm gonna get right on the right track. Right? I'm gonna get back on the right track, I should say. And like again, golf has been my life ever since I was 5 years old. Tournaments when I was 7. I haven't really known much of a different life, but it's been an amazing one. Think about that. Again, I can't say it enough. She knows nothing else but the game of golf, because that's all she's done. Now she gets to do different things. She gets to let loose a little bit. Oh, and by the way, what else? She gets to be Lexi Thompson. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We have a lot of big things planned. Like I said, next week, make sure you keep it locked right here. Make sure you're following the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. Whether it be a review, whether it be a rating, whatever you can do to show that you like, whether you want to send me a message. Again, if you want to send me a story that you want to send, you want to send an opinion, fighting for overtime at gmail.com. Very, very simple. Fighting for overtime at gmail.com. I will get back to you. You can leave your information, or you could just leave an anonymous comment that you want me to read, which is fine. Continue to follow me on Instagram at Fighting for Overtime and TikTok at Fighting for Overtime. Yes, you can follow me, my personal account, Rise with Tony, everywhere. I do a lot of different things. I'm in the sports media world. I do betting. I do PR. I do a lot of different representation. I love doing it. I love interviewing people, and that's what I'm going to do next week. I have a lot of interviews coming your way from different stories. Talk about the NIL, especially now. How that's affecting our youth athletes and youth sports, how it's affecting the mental health of parents and everybody. But there's just so much to talk about. We're going to continue to get stories. We're going to continue to bring it to the light. But at the end of the day, like I continue to say, youth sports has spun way out of control. We're not going to change that. It's going to continue. Now with this ruling coming down of the paid athletes, it's going to get even worse. It's going to get even bigger, even crazier. We can't stop that. But what we can do is be a platform and an outlet and a community to help the up and coming parents, the up and coming kids understand and realize what to expect. And hopefully they can get realistic expectations and be able to pivot in certain circumstances before they even get started down that toxicity path. Tony Cotillo again. Everybody have a fantastic evening, fantastic morning, fantastic afternoon. Whenever you're listening, don't forget to subscribe, and we'll catch you right back here on Fighting for Overtime.
Doing it for the love.